Public Safety Committee of Community Board 2 has been called to order and is now being recorded for the purpose of transparency and for permanent public access on the CB2 YouTube archive. All attendees, please keep your microphone muted when you're not speaking. District staff will actively assist in maintaining this protocol. It is the practice of Brooklyn Community Board 2 to conduct all remote meetings with all committee members' cameras on for full transparency. We encourage all attendees to also leave their cameras on, particularly if you are given the floor to speak. To maintain appropriate discussion and voting process, I will make it known when and which topics are open for public comment, first by committee members, then by board members at large, and then the general public. And then the community board office will also put that in the chat when comment is open to the public. If you wish to speak, please use the Webex feature to digitally raise and lower your hand. And if I'm not able to see that, then the district office will let me know who is waiting to speak. You can also just raise your hand if you're on video. If you have any questions that fall outside of the public comment time, please type your questions into the chat panel and we'll address them if relevant to the matter and if time permits. If any attendee experiences technical difficulties with the Webex software or features during the meeting, please consult help.webex.com. Or after the meeting, please reach out to the district office at bko2.cb.nyc.gov. It is our desire to provide access for all of our neighbors, regardless of physical ability or limitation. If you require any accommodation or assistance for full participation, please contact the district staff 72 hours prior to any public meeting. Have we received any accommodations requests for this meeting?
No. We've received none.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll begin roll call. And maybe John, could you read committee members' names?
Sure. Julia Cullen-Chung.
Here.
Cheryl Gelbs.
Here.
John Quint here. Ernie Augustus. Sandy Balboza. He's here. John Dew. He's here. Doreen Gallo.
Here.
Here. Ryan Howell.
Here.
Patrick Kalaki.
Here.
Sid Meyer.
Here.
Cyril Scala. Cyril, I see.
Here.
Right. And Caroline Todd. I didn't see her. I don't see her on the list. That's it. We have a quorum.
Thank you, John. Taya, could you please put the agenda back up on the screen? Thank you. So this meeting is going to be a little bit different from our regular meetings. Mr. Williams will do a presentation about accessible dispatch, the taxi service. We'll do a brief discussion on that, and then we'll focus on planning for the future for 2021, what topics we would like to hear, and prepare, also review our Department of Transportation list of items before we send that out, and then also initiate a list of MTA items for Mr. Inglesby when he's able to come to our committee meeting, perhaps in springtime. And then we'll do chair's report, other business, community forum, and hopefully break not too late in the evening. So is there an approval of this agenda? Okay, Cyril and John, thanks. Yes, are there any comments? Okay, and then I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Stephen Williams for his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliet. My name is Stephen Williams. I represent the Accessible Dispatch Program. I'm a community outreach trainer, and this program connects the community to wheelchair accessible taxis all throughout the 5 boroughs of New York City. It operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. No enrollment is necessary. Anyone is eligible. You don't have to be in a wheelchair. You could be of any age. Passengers pay only the metered fare that's set by the TLC. So you're getting a larger vehicle, right? You're getting a larger car that can hold a wheelchair. Plus, here's the benefit. You're getting a driver who's trained in wheelchair securement. They can safely secure you with inside the taxi. The taxi has wheelchair securement apparatus. They're trained to properly take you out of the cab and also bring you inside the cab. You pay the same fare as a regular taxi. And it's on demand. It could be on demand service, or you can book trips in advance. You can also access trips and book trips through our website, accessibleidispatch.com. You can also download a mobile app to book trips. And we also have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week dispatch center that can actually take calls anytime. So this is a really great service for the community, especially for our seniors. And I really wanted to share it with you today. And definitely, that's pretty much it. It's a short presentation. I don't want to take up too much of your time. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me.
Is there a fee? Oh.
Good question. All you pay is the metered fare. So you pay the same fare as you would with a regular taxi cab. And even though you're getting a larger car and you're getting someone who's trained to assist the person in and out the vehicle, you pay the same fare. There's no extra additional fee. And once again, I want to stress, this is for anyone. You can use it. I can use it. It's for the entire community. But just in case if a person in a wheelchair needs to access transportation, they can easily access the vehicle and get transportation.
And as we're asking questions, I just wanted to also note that Latrell Mosso is on the call, our fellow community board member. And after our questions of Mr. Williams, Latrell will speak a little bit generally about accessible transit in New York City.
Okay.
Ciro.
Do you set up an account? Is it like a Uber, or can you just call at the spur of the moment and just order one?
That's an excellent question. You can set up. You don't have to have an account. In fact, if you wanted to set up a trip right now, you could. You have the option of booking trips in advance, or you can basically set trips for now. It could be on demand, or you can book trips in advance.
Thank you.
Yeah.
John Quint.
I know I just charges a subway fare,
yeah.
But you're not in competition with them, but will you reduce the demand for Access-a-Ride? Are you looking to replace it for those who require special vehicles to Access-a-Ride, or are you, and of course it's more expensive because of the cab fare, but how do you view yourself in light of Access-a-Ride?
That's a good question. Access-a-Ride is still very, very necessary. We're not trying to take away Access-a-Ride. Access-a-Ride, if you think about it, is more of public transportation. This is more of a regular taxi cab. The only difference is that it's wheelchair accessible and you have a driver trained. So, we're definitely not trying to compete with Access-a-Ride. Access-a-Ride is completely different. Access-a-Ride, you do have to qualify for. Not everybody can get it. But this program, everyone is available to get it. All you need is just to pay your fare at the end of the trip, and that's it. So, yeah, but we're not trying.
No, go ahead. I had a
We're
question.
not trying to take over Access-a-Ride's business. And if you still use Access-a-Ride, still use it. I mean, it's still a very important service. But this is just another option if you don't want to be stuck to a certain time when you leave a party. This you can leave anytime you want. If you go to a game, you don't have to worry about, oh my God, I gotta get my car right away. You can call whenever you want. That's the benefit. Of course, the cost is a little bit more, but you have a little bit more freedom in your life as opposed to being constrained to car schedules.
Who funds you?
Oh, good question. This is a TLC, Taxi Limousine Commission. So this is part of the yellow cabs and green cabs that you see in New York City, but they're much larger. They look like minivans. So it's the TLC, a city agency. Mm-hmm.
And how many cars what's the total number of vehicles that are available?
Great question. We have roughly close to 3,000 vehicles out on the road right now. Yeah.
What number do you call? Did I hear?
Good number. Yeah, the number that we have basically is it's 646 599 5999. If I'm allowed to share my can I allowed to share my screen if possible? I can show you guys the information.
Yes.
Okay, sure. Let me see. Share function. Trying to. Oh, I can just put it in your chat. I'll put it in the chat.
Mr. Williams, you have presenter privileges. If you'd like, you can just select share from the top left,
Share.
where it says File, Edit, Share, View.
I don't have those. File, edit, share, view. Yeah, I don't see that. All I see is yeah, I don't see that. I just see a share option on the bottom, but it's ghosted out.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, no problem. I'll go ahead and put the phone number in the. If you guys want to write it down, I'll give it to you right now.
It's also you put the. I went to the website, so it's
yeah.
It's right at the bottom of the website.
Yeah, it's 646 599 5999. I'll put it in the chat right now.
It says wait. It says 599 9999.
Yes, 646 599 5999. Correct.
No. It says 646 599 then 9999, not 5999. 5 by 6 nines.
1 second.
4 nines.
It's 646 599 9999. That's the number.
Right. You
Hold on,
can say 599 5999.
Yeah, from the website.
Yeah, I guess somebody, I apologize. I guess that number is, hold on, let me check.
I found both numbers. They both are accessible dispatch numbers. One is for making reservations. The other is for asking questions generally. Yeah.
So yeah, the number, yeah, but you can call both numbers, but the number I have is, on my information is basically, yeah.
Not important, but
right, not critical.
Yeah, and basically you also can access the program through our website, which is www.accessibleddispatch.com. So and so it's really easily accessible. And the great thing is that you have the freedom basically to plan your trips the way you want, and not be stuck to a specific schedule of when a car can pick you up or when a car can't pick you up. Any other questions, or?
I would open it up to other board members for questions next.
This is John Doe. I have a question.
Go ahead, John.
Sure.
We hear you.
Yes. The 3,000 vehicles that are in the city, what number is in Brooklyn, and how long is your approximate response time?
The 3,000 vehicles are just vehicles that are, we don't have vehicles assigned to specific boroughs. We just have 3,000 vehicles in total. And what happens is that when you're looking for transportation, basically, we will just basically access and signal the vehicle closest to you. So it's just 3,000 vehicles altogether in the area, and those are assigned specifically for pickup and drop-offs in the area. We are trying to strive for a pickup time of a waiting time of around 15 minutes or so. That's what we strive for. But of course, you know that what happens in the city is traffic and things of that nature. But we try to strive for a 15-minute wait time. The one thing I do advise all of you to do is if you're calling for trips and you're not in the city, I would suggest that you call, give us a 30-minute window, call 30 minutes ahead of time. So that will allow for timely pickup from the pickup location. So we try to strive for a 50-minute time frame. But if you are going anywhere with the service, I do suggest that you actually call the service 30 minutes before time to give yourself a little cushion.
And my other question is, as with Uber, if a call is made and is not completed, is the proposed passenger still charged?
Good question. No, they're not. The only time when you pay a fare, I should say, is at the end of your trip. That's the only time when you pay a fare is at the actual end of your trip. So it's a regular cab where you just pay your fare at the end of the trip, and that's it. It's very simple. You can pay by cash, credit card, or debit card.
And the app also counts down the time that the cab is going to arrive, so I could look and see that it's 5 minutes away or 3 minutes away?
Yes. The benefit of using the app is that the app, you'll get an ETA. You'll get an ETA, you'll get a GPS view of the actual vehicle, and you'll get an ETA of, and you can actually physically see the cab via our map through the app, and you can actually see the car coming to you, and you can get like an ETA of the actual vehicle. So it's really super user friendly. But for people who don't want to use the app, they can actually go ahead and they can use the phone, because some people don't feel comfortable using the actual app itself.
Thank you.
No problem.
Are there any members of the public who would like to ask any questions?
Hi, I have a question. This is Latrell.
Oh, thanks, Latrell. Go ahead.
Hi. First of all, thank you for coming out to talk to us. We
no
greatly
problem.
appreciate it. So you're not affiliated with Accessorize? It's totally different?
Yes, we're separate from Accessoride. Accessoride is part of the MTA. We're part of the TLC, the Tax Limousine Commission.
Okay. Do any of your drivers work for Accessorize also, or they only work for you, for your company?
Yeah, sometimes drivers will get Accessoride trips to pick up members. That's through a whole different system. But yeah, sometimes the taxi cabs will get trips via Accessoride, but I'm not connected to that branch. Yeah.
So is that part of like the pilot program for like anytime, like some individuals have Accessorize anytime and they have needs wheelchairs. So is that part of the program for you guys, or no? You don't have you're not affiliated with that part of Accessorize?
Yeah, good question. We're not connected to the actual pilot program. We're not connected to it. But yeah, I remember when the pilot program was initiated. But yeah, our cabs are just part of the regular TLC system.
Okay. So is there a criteria for your drivers to deal with clients who's in wheelchairs? Is there a certain criteria that you look for those
Yes.
those particular drivers?
Good question. Every driver who gets their TLC license, they have to go through a 24-hour wheelchair securement class when they get their license. So every driver is trained on it. Now, we do offer refreshers. My company, MTM, we offer refreshers to all the drivers, basically on all the critical points on how to properly do wheelchair securement. So yeah, excellent question. Excellent question. Drivers are trained thoroughly when they get their initial license. It's a requirement now. Yeah.
So how often do they go back for additional training to follow up with like after maybe 6 months or 10 months? Do they
good question.
go back for training?
Yeah, we don't have a specific uh timeline on when people go back to get training. I know that I know drivers initially go through it. Now, if a driver wants to drive an accessible dispatch vehicle, then they can go for a refresher on it. But I'm not really sure of the time frame of when people go back for retraining. That's a good question. I may have to find that out, but I'm not too sure about the requirements for retraining. I know that they are trained initially. If someone does if someone who is driving a standard cab wants to have access to drive an accessible dispatch vehicle, they would have to go for a refresher, so they can be familiar with the wheelchair securement and also with the entrance and exit points of the process.
So it's no mandated to go back for retraining.
As far as as far as I know, there's no specific like mandate that I'm aware of. I do know that they have to go through the initial training, but if you do have a driver who is driving a standard cab and they do want to drive an accessible dispatch vehicle, then yes, they will go through a refresher. Because they were trained originally, but of course they may have forgotten. Of course, they've definitely forgotten. They would have to go through a refresher. That would be required. They would have to go through a refresher to drive the vehicle, because not every driver drives an accessible dispatch vehicle.
What about for a wheelchair passenger who has other disabilities? So are they trained to deal with not only a passenger who's in a wheelchair, but also has other disabilities? So are they trained? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, good question. I'm sorry to cut you off. Yeah, we do train them on American Disability Act training. We do give them thorough training on people with disabilities. We do train them on the ADA. We do train them about the different types of disabilities that people have, not just physical, but also cognitive disabilities. So yeah, we do go through a complete American Disabilities Act training, and that's a training I also do with employees that I interact with as well. But yeah, they do go through a thorough ADA training. They are aware of the courtesies on what to say, not to say to individuals. They're trained on basically when they do secure people inside the vehicle, they ask them permission. Is it okay if I put the seatbelt on you, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, we put them through a full American Disabilities Act training. That's a very good question. Excellent question. Yeah.
And I think I have two more, then you finish with me.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you for being patient with me and answering my questions.
No
I really appreciate that. What takes place if a driver is reported? What takes place when a driver is reported for being disrespectful to an individual in a wheelchair of a disability, et cetera? What takes place?
Okay.
What's the repercussions?
As far as what are repercussions, I do know that the passengers can, we do provide the passengers to basically file a complaint with 311. As far as what the repercussions are, I really don't know. I'd have to find out what the repercussions would be. Have you had an experience personally with this? But I don't know what the exact repercussions would be. But I do know that anyone can file a complaint through 311. You'd have to file it through 311. That would be the official way to file a complaint. And then there, I don't know what the punitive actions will be. But I can find out for you. I will find out for you. I'm not really sure what everything ranges. People complain about the smell of the car. They can complain about they're allowed to give the different types of aspects of the service. But I'm not really sure what the specific repercussions would be.
Even if a driver has multiple complaints, I was just curious. That's all.
Yeah. I would have to find out. I'd have to find out what the punitive. That's a good question. I have to find out what the punitive. Have you experienced anything on that nature, or personally, you'd want me to follow up?
No, I'm just asking general questions and concerns because I did speak to individuals,
Okay.
and it's just like different people gave me feedback. So that's why I was just asking,
Okay.
general questions. That's all.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much for taking time to talk to me, answer my questions. I greatly appreciate it.
No problem. No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you,
Are
Mom.
there any other questions?
I just have one for
Okay.
Mr. Williams. Are
Sure.
the drivers salaried or do they get paid based on the trips?
Are the drivers salaried or they get paid based on the trip? Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, as far as I mean, they're all of the drivers basically. You can look at all of the drivers as independent business people, and they basically get paid via the fare. Um, and also, with this program, they also get incentives as well. But yeah, basically, as far as I know, they get paid basically through the fare driving the cab. Some drivers lease their cabs, some drivers, own their cabs. But yeah, it's really based on the fares they get and things of that nature. So that's pretty much how they get paid.
Do you know the turnaround time after which, how long does it take after they accumulate, because the fare is paid into a centralized system, and then you have to take off your percentage and pay the driver the balance?
Oh, I wouldn't know it. I wouldn't know anything
What?
about that. I wouldn't know anything about their pay or any other thing. But I wouldn't know anything about that. Unfortunately, I'm sorry.
And then Sandy?
Yes. Are you dispatch only, or you said you're like the yellow and green cabs that cruise? Do you cruise around? I mean,
Excellent.
when you get dispatched, is there a place where your cabs are? Is there a location where they wait, or are they cruising?
Yeah, what happens is that the cars are cruising. So if you're looking for a specific cab, our system will basically ping the cab that's closest to your pickup location, and then you're picked up. So yeah, these cabs are roaming cabs, and whatever cab is closest to you, our system is going to dispatch the vehicle that's closest to your pickup location. So if you're in Queens, we wouldn't dispatch to a car in Brooklyn. We would dispatch to a car in your area just to secure a timely pickup at your pickup location and timely drop off at your drop off location. That's a very good question. A lot of people do want to know that. So we would obviously get access to the vehicle that's closest to your pickup address.
I have another question. Do
Sure.
drivers do they turn down fares? Like if it's not, is it like a regular, do they know the fare before they go pick up the individual?
No, they don't. The fare is calculated at the end of their trip. So I guess if people drive long enough, they can calculate in their heads, right? But the fare basically is estimated at the end of their trip.
Okay, thank you.
John?
If they're cruising, they can be hailed by a non-wheelchair user, correct?
Good question. So, okay, good question. That's a great question. So if a car is cruising, right, and they get dispatched to pick you up, they cannot pick up anybody else.
I realize that, but they turn their light off. But
Yes.
before they get pinged for a wheelchair trip, they're cruising. So they'll pick up, since they need as many rides
Yes.
in a shift to make money, they'll go to the first person who hails them if they don't have a ping.
Correct. Correct. Yes, correct. You can't.
So does that mean on bad weather days, when you can't get a cab, that's going to be the fate of a wheelchair user also?
So you're saying if a person is out in the street and they'll have a difficult time getting a cab?
No, I'm saying if it's a bad weather day,
Yeah.
a wheelchair user calls your number.
Yeah.
What's the likelihood there could be cabs available because that haven't already been just picked up off the street? You don't guarantee anybody who calls that they're going to get a ride, do you?
I mean, the thing. Here's the thing. I mean, if we as far as guarantee, I mean, we do have our dispatchers that are constantly working the system, and we look at the trips that have been dispatched. And if we do see that, something's taking a long time, we will reach out to the passenger. As far as like guarantee, well, we try our best to basically make sure that trips, get to people. We do have a great staff that looks at our queue and works the queue consistently. But I understand what you're saying. Because there could be times like this where it's difficult to get a cab with all the snow, and I'm not going to pretend that that doesn't happen. Yeah, there could be situations where people are waiting a while for a cab, but our dispatchers work hard in looking at our queue where our rides are dispatched, and they're constantly communicating with passengers. See, this is not like Uber where you basically, can't speak to anybody. You're just basically, you're on your computer, you're on your phone. This basically, we have dispatchers that look at our trips constantly, and they review our trips, and they're making sure that people are picked up in a timely fashion. But we do have a team that oversees the queue and trips that have been dispatched, and they're constantly watching these trips and monitoring these trips, and they work today. So that's
you say you give a driver who takes one of your dispatch trip gets more than the meter, because you say you pay them an incentive on top of the meter, correct?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. There is an incentive when they actually do the actual dispatch rides. Basically, so yeah, they can actually pick up cars in the street, and they do get like an incentive when they basically do the actual accessible dispatch rides.
So there's an incentive to a driver to wait for one of your pings rather than to pick a fare up on the street, because he's going to get more for a trip of the exact same length. How big is the incentive?
Well, what is the cost of the what is the incentive, or you want me to know what the incentive is?
Who pays it, and how much is it?
As far as the incentive is concerned, I'd have to look that up. That's basically the I'd have to look it up. But I know there is an incentive, but I have to look it up. If you want what the incentives breakdowns are, I'd have to send that to you. I'm
just curious. I mean, they're about, if I remember correctly, there are about 33,000 medallions on the street.
Yeah.
So you're saying you have 3,000. You have about 10% of the medallion population who have joined your program, because you don't provide the cabs. It's the cabs that work in your program are simply a part of those 33,000 medallions who've chosen to have big enough cabs to be, or have chosen to have vehicles that are wheelchair accessible, correct?
Say that again. So
the 3,000 that are part of your program,
yes,
are regular medallion cabs that are accessible, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so those 3,000 have chosen to work with your program.
Yes.
And how long has the program been going so far?
The program has been in existence close to almost, I would say, like close to almost 12 years or so. Yeah.
And do you have, and how many trips a day do you generate through your dispatch and the app?
I'd have to find that out as far as the statistics, as far as how many trips are generated per day. Don't know off the top of my head. I don't know how many trips.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And Sid, you seem to be very knowledgeable. Do you want to share a little bit about the background of this?
if you remember, I used to drive a cab, among
Okay.
other things. Right? Now, what they did is that they added there were 3,000, I believe, 3,000 accessible medallions added in addition to the regular medallions. And there's also a way of pay, and part of it was a compromise because there was a lawsuit to require all the cabs to be to be wheelchair accessible. And what they did, and the part was the cab industry agreed to this, that they would pay that in part of the tax. You know, there's an additional tax that's paid on each ride, and that part of that goes to the handicapped cab drivers. Uh, in some form. I'm not exactly sure how the percentages are worked out, but that's how that's worked out. And you know the same rules that apply to cab drivers in not refusing rides applies to to these cabs. Both both yellow cabs and green cabs have rules about when they can and cannot refuse rides, and they're not allowed to refuse. They're allowed to refuse cars that go beyond the service area of the Suffolk County and stuff like that. But once a person is in the cab, they cannot in New York City. They can't, and if they do, and the person makes a complaint, if they get called to the hearing, they can lose their license, and sometimes they've actually pulled medallions as well. So they're fairly strict on these rules. If someone has a complaint, there's a mechanism that I think that was put up where they can file a complaint. They don't have to actually show up at the hearing, but they're going to have to they're going to have to do the hearing on the phone. And you can look up what the fines. There's a fine schedule. You can look it up, and the fines are fairly hefty if they do get caught for refusing, and the penalties do add up, and they add up that if they get more than one complaint within a period of time, the penalty will go up. So again, that's from both the fact that I used to drive a cab, and then occasionally I've defended cab drivers before in front of the TLC. So,
Thanks, Sid. That's helpful. Are there any other questions for Mr. Williams? Okay, I would like to. Oh, yes, John.
My only comment is that the drivers get a percentage of what the meter registers. So the incentive would come by reducing the percentage that the driver has to pay from the fare itself.
No, that's not actually true. That's not true.
Yeah,
that's not true. The way cabs work now, most people, they either own it or they do what's called horse hire. They hire the cab. They pay a flat amount for the cab for the day. So whatever they get on the meter, whatever they get as a tip, they're able to keep. Now, if they charge it, there is a small percentage, a relative, extremely small percentage, that's withheld. And the TLC has rules on this about when it's supposed to be paid, how it's supposed to be paid. But for the most part, they keep the entire. For the most part, they keep the entire meter plus the tip.
Thank you. That's certainly not how it works, but I hear you.
So I wanted to thank you, Mr. Williams, for coming and presenting us your program and how you function with accessible transit within the taxi and limousine community in New York City. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to invite Latrell Mosso to speak generally about accessible transit in New York City. Mr. Williams, you're welcome to stay on, or you can leave. Oh, I guess he already left. So I'd like to turn it over to Latrell. Latrell, you're on mute if you're speaking. Latrell, did you step in case she stepped away, maybe we should come back to her.
Juliet.
Yes, Cheryl.
Yeah, I sent you a text and I sent you an email earlier. I have to drop off after this presentation.
Understood, Cheryl.
Thanks.
Okay, well, I think we'll just have to come back to Latrell, and maybe Taya and Carol Ann, we can keep an eye on when she is able to rejoin the meeting. And then I think the next agenda item is the review of 2020 before we start our planning. Is that right? Carol Ann?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So I'm gonna just take it. This has been a really interesting year. A lot of things have evolved in New York City. We used to get sidewalk cafe applications, and now look at New York City with sidewalk cafes all over the place. We used to have in-person meetings, and now we're on digital, which John hopefully will convert to Zoom one day soon. So I'll just do a quick review of some of the things that we've heard this year. Way back when, we heard about helicopter safety in New York City and New York State, in populations as dense as New York. We heard about the BQX. We did a co-naming for Richard Wright on Carlton between Myrtle and Willoughby. Downtown Brooklyn Partnership presented to us twice. They came to show us their master plan about their public space and open space greening initiatives. And then they came back to us with a very concrete plaza proposal as they were working with the developers of 11 Hoyt to reimagine the streets around 11 Hoyt as a more interesting public plaza walkway. We did not hear very much about the BQE. The expert panel finished their recommendations. Some heavy trucks were removed from the BQE, but we really haven't heard very much. It's been a long time. So I think that that's something that we really need to push to hear more about. We heard about some bike lanes in the summertime. DOT came to us with multiple bike lanes, Smith Street, J Street, which was implemented, I believe. They closed down that portion of the street to non-local traffic by Metrotech. We heard about bike lanes on 4th Avenue, on Navy Street, between Flushing and Sands, which I understand is postponed for budget reasons. We heard about improvements to the Manhattan Bridge with the Brooklyn Forest Project and supported that. And we had a couple of very robust discussions on public safety and alternatives to the current criminal justice system. We had Brandon Holmes and Brandon Smith come talk to us about decarceration, community courts initiatives, and I think we learned a lot in that process. We had the new captain of the 84th precinct, Adil Rana, come speak to us. We had people come speak about taking down Columbus statues. And recently, after we referred them over to the YECA and/or Parks Committee, those committees supported the removal of Columbus statues. So we had a couple of instances this year of community members coming forward, bringing forth an idea, like the transportation's alternative person coming to talk about adding bike lanes to the roadway of the Manhattan Bridge, and then supporting actual proposals like Brooklyn Bridge Forest to implement that and much more. So that's the year in review, and I would like to open it up to you guys for planning for the future. I want to see. Carol Ann has pulled up the DOT list that is a Google Doc that we do need to send over to them. Carol Ann, could you speak to us about some of the plans for the early meetings of the year that we've already been speaking about and planning for?
Hi, can everyone hear me? Because I can't see.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So in January, we will be having DOT come in, and that is why we do have this spreadsheet for our January meeting. We'd like to get the questions to them sometime next week so that they'll have 3 weeks or also 3 real weeks, because we don't know who's on vacation at the end of the year to do their research. But we also have a meeting in January with the Health, Environment, and Social Services Committee on a topic that is of interest to transportation and public safety, and that is homelessness. We will have DHS, Department of Homeless Services, and CAMBA, not-for-profit that provides housing and support services to homeless persons. This committee is invited to also provide questions that can go to those organizations and to participate in the HES meeting on January 6th.
Carolyn, I'm just going to jump in there. John Doe, our former co-board member from Myrtle Avenue Partnership, Judd Marcus, let me know that there's an initiative right now where the city is trying to select certain neighborhoods to participate in an initiative whereby they would dispatch medical and health professionals in case of 911 emergencies that don't involve violence, that may involve a mental health issue instead. And they're looking for neighborhoods to implement this initiative, the city is. And it was not something I was aware of before. I think it is a part of Thrive NYC. That is Mayor de Blasio's wife, Shirlane McCrae's initiative. So that may be something that we want to support and talk about in the homeless meeting in January with HES. That might be a good collaborative discussion.
We on Myrtle Avenue, we did implement a homeless program. We have lots of homeless on Myrtle Avenue, particularly closer to Flatbush Avenue, but we also have a plaza on Myrtle that tends to attract the degree of homeless. We have actually been working with the Department of Homeless Services on Myrtle Avenue for a period of time, and we've learned a lot about this homeless population that demonstrates why it is so difficult to get homeless folk off the street. The first thing we learned is that they're not all homeless. Some of them are shelter residents and choose to spend their time on the street, but they actually do have a place to go back to. But we also discovered that it takes what we're told are 8 interactions with homeless folk before you can convince them to go into any particular kind of program. So this problem is not going to be easily solved, because it hasn't been solved, and it's getting worse. And we suspect with the pandemic that it looks to get even worse than that.
Thank you, John. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, not trying to contradict you, John, but what I've heard, 8 songs are a surprisingly low number to me, because in the past I've heard of much higher number, like over 50 interactions. And they're also not allowed to constantly go to speak to someone. There has to be a period of time between interactions, otherwise it counts as harassment. So it's a tough thing.
From 8 to 50?
Yeah.
Oh my, okay.
And as we're planning, we did, Carol Ann and I and Cheryl did discuss about potentially doing a joint meeting with the HES committee on homelessness, but we decided, we all collectively with that committee decided to keep it separate, and then maybe we could participate with questions. There was some sensitivity to approaching homelessness from a public safety perspective, rather than a social service perspective, which I can understand the sensitivity to that. So I know Caroline Todd, I think you were the one that suggested a year ago or so when we were doing this planning for 2020, when we were planning for the meetings we would have, you had suggested that homelessness, could be something that we take on. But I think this participation with the HES committee might be a better and more sensitive way to do that. Okay, sorry to interrupt you, Caroline.
Oh no, I was done. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Juliet. I think that's perfect. And I think part of the issue with I love the new framing of it, and I'm happy to submit questions to HES. It's also that the public safety of our neighbors experiencing homelessness was a concern, not, and so that sounds like a great option. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Caroline, can you say 2 words about the homeless shelter that's opening up on Emerson Avenue?
I'm not familiar with a homeless shelter being open. Are you speaking of the ICL initiative, new project?
Yes.
Well, it's not exactly a homeless shelter. It is going to be supportive housing and affordable housing in one space. They currently are there. It's an expansion of the current building with the ability to provide more programming. It's currently, I believe, 32 units, and under this project, it will go up to about 80 units. I don't remember the exact number. And it's a good thing. ICL does quality programs, and we'll be doing our bit to provide some quality housing for those who may experience homelessness due to drug abuse or domestic violence.
Thank you, Caroline.
You're welcome, sir.
Caroline, it's Ciro. Aren't they going to supply people who can help with mental illness and things like that on site in that building?
Yes, that's part of the supportive housing program. They'll provide, social work help with finding employment. It'll be a full service supportive housing.
Thank you. Juliet, I had are we speaking about adding to the agenda speakers for next?
Caroline, were you done with talking about the possibilities for early next year?
Yeah, we were just basically up to January. In February, we're thinking of having the Kings County District Attorney Division of Street Safety present, but we will have to provide them as well with questions, because they have many different units apparently within that bureau. So that's also something we can discuss for the upcoming year.
And then also the MTA, we would like to get them too. So yes, Ciro, then please go ahead with your ideas.
Thank you. I had seen an article in the New York Times on December 13th, headline, New York confronts the culture of guns. It highlights the gun culture that permeates the area. And they basically were quoting a study given by the Center for Court Innovation. And I thought if that Center of Court Innovation could speak to us, that would be interesting to see what's going on and get a much more rounded picture on where we stand as far as that goes. So I would like to encourage us to sort of invite them over to speak.
Good idea, thank you.
We are in the midst of a pandemic. We have no idea what's happening with that. Yesterday was the highest day of death with over 2,000 people dying. While New York is currently at the lower end of the spectrum, we expect it's still going up. And we have no idea where this is going to end. Now, with this being public safety also, as well as the HES committee, we should have some kind of a task force that addresses some of these issues concerning the pandemic. I mean, we almost go along like it doesn't exist. It impacts everything that we do. We can't step out without having to confront some aspect of this pandemic. It's all over the place. We as a community board don't appear to have any sense of what we should or could be doing to assist our community in dealing with this pandemic. So I'm just putting that out there as a generic issue. I think we should have some kind of a task force that helps to deal with this issue that is only going to get worse and impacts us all over, everything we do.
Thanks, John. Do you have certain ideas with that?
Oh, yeah, I have a whole host of ideas. Everyone knows I do a community distribution, and recently, for the last month or so, most of the items in the distribution have to do with the pandemic and the impacts of the pandemic. I did speak with Brandon about Brooklyn Hospital, which is the only hospital in our district. It is a hospital that functions at a severe deficit, and it's expected to be overwhelmed. The pandemic affects folks of color much more because they live in much closer environments and a whole host of other issues. You could just name almost anything, and the pandemic has impact on it. Everything. We're talking about construction downtown Brooklyn. Are the construction workers going to continue doing it? What is the mechanism for making sure that they have the appropriate protective equipment? I mean, it's just like everything that we do, you have to take the impact of the pandemic into account. We have to find out some mechanism that helps us to get involved with this. I mean, we are doing everything over the internet at this particular point. I mean, that's one thing that's changed everything. But you can't really go out safely now. What should we be telling the residents of our district? And that's another issue that I'm bringing up for the entire committee, is that the community board needs to work on communication with the entire community. Whether it's Twitter or Instagram, we have to have some mechanism that's easy for folks to get information. At last count, I was told we have 1,400 folk on our email list. We have 140,000 people in our district. So we're communicating with a tiny percentage of the folk that are in our district. In the advent of this, for example, when they start doing the vaccinations, how is that supposed to work? How are we supposed to communicate with our community as to where to go and what to do and all that kind of good stuff? I can tell you on Myrtle Avenue, we have already notified the folks in the Fort Greene Public Housing Project that are on our food pantry program. We just put flyers inside of this food to get them familiar with the need to potentially get these injections, because there's going to be a lot of resistance. There's upwards of 50% of the population that is purportedly afraid of these injections. How do we get to that herd number that they're talking about of 75%? And again, it's one of these issues where the communities of color will suffer. So I think the possibilities, Juliet, are endless to come up with issues that we can use to address our community, but more importantly, we need a mechanism communicating with the community much more than the current email system that we have. And so we need to prioritize what is important for our community. And
Thank you, John. I echo that as well, and you've been bringing that up for a long time, and it's been a good thing to bring up for a long time. Taya, you've brought a whole breath of technological fresh air to our community board functions. I see you've entered some information into the chat. Could you, or perhaps Carol Ann, if that's more appropriate, let us know what we need to advocate to the Finance and Personnel Committee, what resources are required in order to, other than that, we understand Zoom requires some resources that need some budget allocation from the borough president's office or wherever we're getting budget for Zoom, but for managing social media accounts, what resources are needed for that? Oh, that's news. Zoom has been approved and will launch on January 11th. Thank you for that news. Thanks.
Yes, and I'll see to Taya for more details because she's been more deeply involved in that discussion.
Taya, would you like to speak to the resource needs?
Sure. I actually don't have any additional information to share other than social media has been discussed on the Finance and Personnel Committee since May. A plan has been submitted. I believe it's still under deliberation.
Okay, so we'll just continue to push generally then. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Are there other, didn't know you could do that on Webex. Other recommendations for sessions for this coming year?
I want to throw out another issue that is being partially addressed in the Land Use Committee, and that is that we are trying to get these developers to fund ADA compliance in all of the train stations. It's a federal government requirement, and there's absolutely no plan from the MTA to make these stations downtown Brooklyn ADA compliant. I will tell you that an upzoning in Dumbo was rejected because the York Street train station entrance is like something out of the Stone Age if you've never been there. It's actually worth a trip to see what that station operates like. So ADA compliance in all of the train stations should be a priority. I'm not quite sure why the powers be have made that part of what the developers of all these buildings downtown Brooklyn should be made partially responsible for. We did obtain $500,000 from a developer to make the Nevin Street station not ADA compliant, but to do the studies and planning around what it would take to make that station compliant. So we already have a mechanism for making this happen. We just need the city and the other entities to get on board with it so that we can get the funding essential to make these stations ADA compliant. All of them have to be made ADA compliant. They started doing some work in Borough Hall to continue to be ADA compliant, but that's not enough. There should be a plan for every station.
And this would be in the context of a rezoning or some sort of public action that the developer would be requesting. And so as a condition of that request, we should advocate for such an infrastructure upgrade as ADA compliance of the subways.
The answer is yes. We've already had some success with this. When you submit a ULURP application and you come before us, we ask about it in the Land Use Committee. And so we already have a history of success. We need to take that, build on it.
Okay, thanks, John. Ciro, yes.
Yeah, I want to just add, you mentioned BQE. I would like to see us get a recap from whatever organization have them come and speak to us and just give us an update, as you mentioned, Juliet, just to sort of tie the loose ends together and see where they're at. I don't know who we would invite, but DOT or whoever, have them come and speak to us about the BQE, since that is one of the prime, we shouldn't forget that prime issue and keep it on the agenda.
That definitely needs to be very big on our list. It may not be at the level of, who's our DOT liaison again, Carolyn?
Emily Requelme.
Yes, Emily Requelme. It may not be at her level to speak to us about it on when she comes in March or whenever she comes, but absolutely, we need a whole meeting about that, only that. And maybe that would be a public or general meeting, but I'm not sure what
Thank you.
Lenny would think about that. But yeah, definitely. Thank you. Yes, Caroline.
Hey, for later in the year, it might be good to hear about any updates to the Brooklyn jails plan in New York City. But I thought having the Department of Corrections superintendent, the chief of the old Brooklyn House of Detention, speak with us it was probably like 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, was really insightful. And so maybe coordinating that again, even though there's supposedly no one in the Brooklyn House of Detention now, or really just kind of figuring out what's going on there. And then I think that is likely going to change over the course of 2021 and 2022.
Juliet?
Oh, just to address that first, Carolyn, there is some effort to get that happening in our committee, right? The update on the Borough-based jail.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
yes,
Sandy.
Yeah, I spoke to Rob about this, I think last week or the week before. I was on the NAC, and we haven't met since the ULURP, well, before the ULURP. And we did meet with Councilman Levin. He was going to meet with the mayor's office. We have not been able to, and he did that maybe the second week of October. We met with him the very beginning of October. We've reached out. He doesn't respond. We think he's missing in action. But you know, the DOC budget was cut, and a lot of things changed with COVID too. You know, people in jail getting COVID, because we were talking about that. So I think there needs to be a review. But John said, well, maybe we'll get the mock J, but I never found them to be transparent. It wasn't a good process, the NAC. We were supposed to be the neighborhood advisory committee, but they never responded to anything that we thought was, you know, relevant, important, whatever. So, I mean, I don't know, you know, there are there's the lawsuit from Manhattan, and I don't know what happened to the lawsuit from Queens. So in Brooklyn, we don't know what's going on, and our councilman won't talk to us, and we never really get a straight answer from the mock J. So I don't know. That's the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. So I don't know. I mean,
do you have another idea of who to invite to get the update from?
Well, I wish our councilman would have gotten back to us, because we gave him a whole bunch of questions. But I mean, if it's the mock J, I think it's just the, you know, the spiel that you get from the bureaucracy. But I don't want to say not to. I'm just saying, I don't know if it's going to give us much information, but maybe that's what we have to do. Okay. You know, it's going to be a big deal. What you know, we need to know what's going on. Maybe what's his name? Brandon Holmes, maybe some of the people have, I don't know, from Just Leadership or some of those organizations have ideas or know, or do they want to know what's going on? Who would they, reach out to?
Sandy,
Yeah,
if I may, why don't we just re-invite Councilman Levin?
Well, I said that to Rob, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, you said it to Rob in the discussion with the committee. Why don't we just send him an invitation to come and speak to us about the subject?
Well, that's what initially I said to Rob, he's not responding to us. Maybe he'll respond to the community board and we can find out, but I don't know what we're going to get from him either, but that's what I did start out saying.
Good idea.
Oh, you know what? I'm missing a tooth. I hope everybody didn't see that.
Oh, oh no, what happened?
Did it? Well, 20 years ago, I was,
20 years ago.
but it got infected and I had to have it pulled during COVID. So,
I'm sorry. We can't tell, Sandy. Don't worry.
oh, okay. Yep. I'm finished.
Okay. I was also reminded that there is an initiative to have a pilot program for e-scooters to proliferate around our streets, like in San Francisco and all around California. So the vendor has not yet been selected. And I figure just like Revel and Jump Bikes and all of the other transit initiatives, alternative transit initiatives, personal transit initiatives that have come into New York City, that the selected contractor would come to present to us sometime next year as well.
Oh, can I say something? So
Yes, Sandy.
the e-bikes have grown into mopeds. So we have mopeds, e-bikes. They're very reckless here. I just went to an NCO meeting on Tuesday from my sector, Sector C. And they said that they were going to ask some part of the police department to come and evaluate and see if there's a problem. There is a problem. It's
Revel came to us. Were you at that meeting when Revel came to us after the fatalities and then they restarted?
I'm talking about the delivery people who ride
Oh.
e-bikes, and they use mopeds. I'm not talking about Revel. I'm talking about the delivery people mopeds, and I'm not against them, having them. I just think they should not be on the sidewalk. And so I would like to see if we can, get some evaluation of what's going on in the areas that are connected with this problem. So maybe that's for a meeting.
Is that a question for DOT? Or would that be an enforcement thing?
I think
would that be like crash statistics for e-bikes, requesting crash statistics for e-bikes in our district?
No, I'm talking about them illegally riding on the sidewalk. We need enforcement. Nobody wants to do anything. It's an issue that, involves a lot of immigrants. Transportation alternatives supported the
legalization, yeah.
But they don't say anything about that they recklessly ride on the sidewalk. They zoom in, they weave in and out. There are lots of people on Atlantic Avenue, even the smaller streets. We need enforcement, and that's New York, the
NYPD.
Mm-hmm.
Caroline?
Juliet, excuse
yes.
me. Are you interested in getting crash statistics all the same?
Yes. If they're, because on their website, they have pedestrians, they have vehicular crash statistics already. They may have bike crash statistics, but I don't know that they have e-bike crash statistics.
Yeah, see if it's broke now.
Yeah.
It's not just the crashes if they're having accidents. It's that they weave in and out of. You're walking on the sidewalk. You don't want to you know, a vehicle to come up, you know, and,
Oh, we understand, Sandy.
Yeah.
Yes, Caroline.
okay, go ahead.
I wonder if that conversation be framed as part of a larger conversation about just increasing safety and space for pedestrians, for the e-scooter pilot, for e-bikes, for people who use wheelchairs and strollers and bikes, instead of trying to target
E-bikes.
delivery people. Yeah. And because I think that is a major concern a lot of people have, but the bigger point is that there's not enough safe space for most of the people using the street.
Caroline?
I want to suggest that maybe this is a question we can also pose to the Kings County DA Street Safety Unit.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Carolyn, I've never heard of a Kings County Street Safety Unit. Can you send information out to the Transportation Committee members that defines what they do?
I'll try. It's part of the DA's office. I'm not quite sure they have an individual webpage, but I'll look.
Okay, thank you.
Brian, do you have any specific ideas? I'm going to call you out. No. Okay. So thank you everybody for these ideas. If we could go back to the DOT list, I just want to make sure that we have everything that we want to ask of them before we submit the list.
Can I have the pineapple, please, Taya?
I'm sorry about before. I couldn't get to the phone.
Oh, Lachelle, thank you for coming back. Let's go to you. We'll postpone DOT.
But no, DOT is fine because I wanted to know, could we have somebody, I don't know if I'm allowed to ask to add stuff to your committee, but can we have somebody to come in and talk about accessibility of streets? And it was a recently person who was just, I think, was for the job, because that's partly what I was going to speak about accessibilities for streets.
It's a great idea. And you had mentioned that there are a lot of other issues that go along with that. Could you expand on that?
Well, I'm not gonna be long because I don't want to take up everybody's time. But the link is, I just put it the link for the meeting. There's a bunch of meetings like in the link from the city council, and it's a bunch of links. So you just have to go down to transportation accessibility. There's stuff on housing. There's different meetings for the city council, so you could view the meeting. But it basically spoke about accessibility of streets, about the crossing lights, about, I know Mr. Dew spoke about it before. I know we have it downtown Brooklyn by Court and Montague, but to make sure it'll be like citywide, to have, you know, the different when you press the button, that each light, you know, it could tells you where to cross, where is not to cross. And I believe there was a lawsuit not long ago that came out about it separately. Also about the mopeds on the streets, they spoke about that, and scooters. They spoke about the traffic signals, because like some traffics, the intersections have so many different ways. And also there was a young lady on channel 11, Fox on Pix 11. They did a whole interview on channel 11 about a young blind lady who was having problems crossing a big intersection street. So they have people submitted different testimonies. The person, Jean Rubin from DIA, Disability in Action, she spoke. A lot of people submitted written testimonies. I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember everything. I didn't know I was going to speak about this tonight. I apologize, I got confused. Also, they talked about the sidewalks and the snow on the sidewalks, and about how the sidewalks should be like different textures from the sidewalk to be when so people with visual impairment, different mobilities, to tell the difference from the sidewalk from the street. So it mostly dealt with that, and different people and the council people asked questions from DOT. And yeah.
And the context, do you know the context of these city council hearings? Are they hearing a particular law?
Well, usually it's funny because that's what someone we were speaking about. Usually the city hearings are really long, the meetings, but it wasn't that bad it was not as long as it usually. A lot of people didn't show up to testify. There was a lot of people who submitted their testimonies, I think. So it should be no more than 2 to 3 hours, maybe less, maybe more.
Thank you, Latrell. Did you want to speak at all about the Accessoride program? Given our earlier presenter was not Accessoride, it was TLC.
No, maybe that's something you could get in the future. Somebody from Accessorize to come. Maybe that's something you can look at in the future.
Sounds good. Okay, thank you.
I saw something, I think Sid texted something when here about Times Plaza Triangle. This has been going on. I know John Dew and I were on a committee, I forget what year, but my volunteer organization was working on this, trying to get something done. It's been decades. And I thought the downtown partnership, since Ratner doesn't exist anymore, he was supposed to be the maintenance partner, but I think the downtown partnership is supposed to take over. It really needs to be fixed. It needs to be, it's a scary intersection, a lot of accidents. It's the gateway to different neighborhoods. People are afraid to go there. They need to make it more of a pedestrian, so people know it's for pedestrians. It's not part of the road. It's got asphalt on it.
Yeah, even though Forest City Ratner is gone, there's still an owner. It's Greenland, the Chinese company. And I believe they're still on the hook to develop that, but I have no idea what the strings are to pull the strings and levers to effectuate their commitment.
But what about the downtown partnership? It's in one of their bids.
But not the build out, just the maintenance.
Well, maybe they can put some string, pull the strings that you're.
Right.
Well, why don't we just ask the DOT to bring us up to date on what's happening and not have a meeting about what this is now?
Yes.
I mean, we have
Let's
other
add it to the list. Add it to the list.
That's why I put it in the thing to be put on the list of DOT to find out what's going on.
Okay. Caroline's got you. She raised her thumbs up. Okay. Yes, Brian. We can't hear you. You're on your headphones. It's like headphone mute mode.
Mr. Howell, you are unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Oh, that's strange. It was.
Now we can hear you now.
Somehow it was on a different microphone setting, which is the same as the. Never mind. I just wanted to add about the accessibility items that Latrell was speaking about. If you've walked anywhere in the last 24 hours, you'll encounter crosswalks and filled with snow. In fact, if you clear out a crosswalk, a snowplow will come by 30 minutes later and dump snow in the crosswalks. And cities that receive a lot more snow or higher latitudes than us have figured out a way to prioritize removal of snow from sidewalks and crosswalks. And it is absolutely an accessibility issue, not to mention a bizarre way to do things given that more people in the city walk than anything else. And the point that I would like to see DOT to fill us in on how they, there's been pushes to get, Department of Sanitation to get, sorry, not DOT, but sanitation to get plows that can clear bike lanes, so they're narrower than existing ones. But I'd like to hear what DSNY is doing in terms of, prioritizing snow removal for people walking. And I think that's within our purview.
Good point.
And also for people with wheelchairs.
Yes.
And there's another problem with the plows, the fire hydrants. I dug mine out a few times and they come back later and keep pushing the snow on the fire hydrant. So that's a problem. There's no connection. It's just plowing.
Carolyn, can you share the list while we, Sid, are you speaking or are you fixing something up there? Oh, we can hear you, but it sounds like you're fixing something.
I know how to unmute to talk, so.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're all set on the DOT list. And I want to acknowledge we have a guest, Renee Raniwera. Would you like to introduce yourself and say anything during our sessions that we're just brainstorming on what we'd like to hear for next year?
Oh, hi. No, I'm just observing. I've been to a couple of different community boards and seeing which committees I like. I'm a cyclist, so transportation seems interesting to learn more about. And the bike lanes, I appreciate the comment about the unplowed bike lanes and drowning in sidewalk crossings this afternoon while getting home from work. So lots to hear about. So thanks for letting me sit in.
Great. Welcome. Thank you.
Juliet,
oh, there it
we
is.
should ask, see if they are planning to explore this new technology that melts the snow rather than pushes it some other area where it's going to be pushed back and it remains inconvenient. There are some cities that have explored this new machinery that actually melts the snow as opposed to move it.
We've looked at that at Steiner Studios, and it's super expensive, which is probably why it's not widespread.
Okay. Well, we should put it on the list and plant the seed. Maybe they can do one machine.
Snow clearing technologies and mechanisms. Let's add it to the list.
Also,
will be the test.
Sorry, what?
I'm sorry.
Be the test.
All right, let's go for Carol Ann. You first.
Oh, not me.
Oh, that wasn't you. Okay, John. Then I didn't recognize the voice.
I have a question. What about some type, I'm not a tech person, but usually when they do work on streets, it's like, I know the community board too sends out information to let us know they're doing types of construction work, but someone else who's not affiliated with the community board, affiliated with different organizations, they don't have the same opportunity to receive the message. So for someone who's totally blind or visual impaired, when they walk outside and they walk into a corner, if they don't know, like they're doing work there, work in the street, they could easily get physically hurt. Or like for someone who takes accessorize, if you scheduling a trip or you calling a cab to pick you up at a location, they won't even pick you up at your location because they can't get into that block because of construction. So maybe some type of app or some type of computer program, Google program or something that can help. I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly. I guess I'm not, because no one said anything.
No, you are.
No, I understand what you're saying, Latrell.
So it could be something more. Go ahead.
Actually, something like that does exist. There is an app out there that tells you, for example, where the police are, so you know to slow down. when you get into that area. That type of app can be used for exactly what you're talking about, where construction sites are identified on the app, and the person calling the cab would know that, and they could then make arrangements to meet at a corner or something like that to avoid the construction site.
Thank you.
Thanks, Latrell. So going to the DOT list, it looks like the second item on the list we should remove because that has been completed. The Tillery and Flatbush Avenue improvements, I believe. I'm not aware of the improvements for the pedestrian safety. So I don't know if that is still an issue. John Quint, I guess you're the closest to there. Do you perceive that as still an issue? Can't hear you, John, if you're talking.
Can I repeat that, Julia? I'm sorry.
The second question here, promoting pedestrian safety at Tillery and Flatbush for cars turning left northbound from Tillery onto Flatbush. Now, I know that the improvements have been completed or are almost completed at Tillery. But is this pedestrian improvement still a concern?
It's around the corner, but it's not a direction I usually walk, so I haven't seen it. I mean, yes, they've completed all of the work on Tillery.
I bike down Tillery to get to Park Avenue.
Yes.
I don't think that they really did much on. Are we talking about like the western crosswalk of Tillery and Flatbush?
There's hardly anything done. It doesn't help the pedestrians at all.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's
still a
double
mess.
turn lanes. Maybe they rebuilt the the median, but it's the same with really all they did with Tillery was put in a concrete median.
Okay, so maybe we can reword that to, recognizing that improvements were made to Tillery, how is DOT promoting pedestrian safety at that intersection, Tillery and Flatbush? Maybe
Yeah,
just as simple as that.
Yeah, that's fair because there are those, there's a left, I'm not sure what, it's the left turn from, Tillery, Flatbush, and for cars turning left northward from Tillery runs east-west. Flatbush is the one that's running north, so I'm not exactly sure what that question.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, let's be vague about it and say at Flatbush.
There are two major left turns. There's the left turn from westbound Tillery to southbound Flatbush, and the turn from northbound Flatbush to westbound Tillery. And the cars that are coming left go a great distance before they cross the pedestrians that are crossing Tillery, so or crossing Flatbush. So that's always a big problem because, and I'm not sure how the lights run. I've never watched when they are. I'm pretty sure that when the left turn is in effect, there's not a walk. The problem is really probably the timing of the walk and don't walk signs. But cars do go after the light has changed. That's
There's insufficient time for the pedestrians. They have a traffic agent there, but they're there to try to promote the traffic from getting across. It's really a mess.
Yeah, that's the same problem at Adams and Tillery. They will wave cars. They will not. They will be looking at the cars and not turn around and see if there are any pedestrians in the crosswalk.
Yep. Okay. Can we go down a little bit? Maybe we can also ask a general question about how have budget reductions affected projects in the pipeline that were previously approved by Community Board 2? budget reductions.
And Julia, to build on that, when this is submitted, if a particular project is funded, DOT has to allocate funding for that particular project, can we be notified of the fact that the project is funded and the amount or the cost of that DOT is assigning to that project?
And while you're writing, can we see more of the list so that we can review it while you're writing? Yeah, after the ones we already reviewed.
Do you want me to scroll more?
Yes, please. So we have Times Plaza up there. So it's listed twice. We should just consolidate the two questions.
Okay, will do. I'll write it. It's easier for me to go back.
See, that date was 6/11/19, Times Plaza, for asking for an update.
So the open streets enforcement is not DOT though. So is there another question for open streets that can be more tailored to DOT, because they're just going to say, oh, that's not us, we don't do enforcement. That's the NYPD.
I have an idea. And it came after we had our meeting last month. And this really mostly applies to, well, I guess it can apply to most open streets, but one-way streets. It occurred to me that the easiest way to ensure that people don't use open streets as through streets is to reverse traffic on alternate or on, every other block of an open street. And if it's only one block, then you just reverse the traffic on that block. It allows anybody to, for the most part, barring, I don't want to get into the minutia of well, this street in this one place, that can't work. It allows local access, but it deters anybody from using the street as a through street. The only reason anybody would use it is to access that particular block. And I think that, I don't really know what our role is in asking for that, but I think it's probably one of the easiest ways the city could make open streets self-enforcing. I would like to see that happen. I don't know what we should do.
That is really interesting, Brian. Did you come up with that design yourself, or did you hear that?
I'm not the only person to have come up with this idea, but I came up with it independently of anyone else.
It's very interesting. And I think it would work, but they might find some reason, but I like it. I think that's a good way to, and it becomes a design issue then. So DOT would be the agency that would be responsible for considering it.
Exactly.
So if we remove the word enforcement and,
I think it's design changes to make the streets self-enforcing.
Exactly. Okay, good.
Juliet?
Yes.
So a few weeks ago, there was a tractor trailer. It was an Amazon tractor trailer that was bigger than any tractor trailer I've ever seen. And it got stuck on my block because it couldn't get under the traffic light at Hoyt and Atlantic. So it wanted to do a U-turn and go back. I don't know where it came from exactly, but there's something going on with Amazon in Red Hook, or do they have a truck?
Yeah, there's a new facility being built, I believe, down there in Red Hook.
Yeah, so I don't know if it came from there, but even though Atlantic Avenue is a truck route, it couldn't get through. So we have to know what's going on. I don't know if that's how, I mean, they're not supposed to be, I think they're even too big for Atlantic Avenue for a truck route, but nothing gets enforced. And when it did get enforced, it was very, not very, it didn't impact anything.
So maybe suggestion of DOT meeting with Amazon to better educate its workforce, its drivers on truck routes, something like that.
I don't know, just in general, enforcement of oversized, vehicles.
But enforcement is not DOT, so that's why I'm suggesting something that's DOT related.
Oh.
If I may, on the freight front, DOT is supposed to come out with plans designating which roads are the truck routes, and they update it every so often. And I don't believe their updates came out this year. And so I do think that that's something to take into consideration, especially with open streets and everything.
Well, that truck was on a truck route. Atlantic Avenue is a truck route, and it did not fit. And then it got stuck. They had to get a special, I don't know, the police were there and they had to pull it. I didn't watch it, but they were supposed to pull it so it could then, it's just wider than, couldn't make the U-turn because there was one of those, coffee shop had one of those street, what do you call those things?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it just, it just got stuck. It stopped the buses. Nobody could go through for.
So why don't we add the suggestion that, or first, has DOT published its truck routes for this year, and can it conduct outreach with major delivery companies such as Amazon, FedEx, UPS, etc., to better educate its drivers on truck routes?
Sorry, go ahead.
Smith and J, where the temporary, now permanent, slightly protected bike lane is a truck route, and so like there are things that the truck route map that those delivery drivers do have does not reflect.
That's a good point to add. The current outdated map has conflicts with bike routes? Okay.
I do think that there is an enforcement component that is within the purview of, or within the abilities of DOT. We have, a 53-foot trailer is banned from, 53-foot trailers are prohibited in every inch of space in our borough. You can't take a 53-foot trailer on a truck route, except for, certain exempted ones, none of which go through Brooklyn. If you go down to Atlantic Avenue and stand out there for 5 minutes, I guarantee you'll see a 53-foot trailer. These are the ones that are getting stuck, making turns a lot of the time. DOT could create a camera enforcement. They know the streets. They can, put some mark on the street, or put several marks on the street that say the distance between these two spots is this amount. And they could just automate enforcement of 53-foot trailers or oversized trucks. That's totally possible.
And would you suggest Atlantic Avenue, or where particularly could we target that enforcement?
In the same way that DOT runs the speed camera program.
I can't get back.
Okay. Any other additions before we move on? And then we can let Carol Ann wordsmith these things that we're talking about. Okay, thank you.
Scroll a little more.
Oh, we're going to move on. We're going to move on to the next next agenda topic. And if I remember correctly, it's probably chair's report. In which scenario we usually review the CompStat reports, but it's getting late, so I will refer you to your email from Carol Ann for those. And then the next topic is other business. Is there any other business to come before this committee meeting tonight?
Yeah, I did want to ask Carol Ann if it is possible to get a report from the police department of their interactions by category. We are looking at, and this is part of the Black Lives Matter, there is a movement to not defund the police, although that's the terminology that's used, but to redirect services that should be handled elsewhere. If we can determine what the police are called and then look at what is inappropriate for the police to be called for, like this homeless population piece, and so that we can begin to direct energy that is currently given to the police department to a more relative committee or entity within the city that functions in that capacity. The other thing, Juliet, in regards to that ice machine, I know it's an expensive product, as you just indicated. However, if we compare the cost of that product to the cost of the machines that have to constantly go and remove the snow, there might be a way to determine a cost benefit of getting that machine. So that's
for sure. And the city has money that the private, entities don't necessarily have. So, I think we should put the technologies for snow melting to improve accessibility on the list.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, Caroline.
I have two things, but the first one is quick, and I wanted to bring it to the attention of everyone on this committee that a member of our district was a victim of a driver crashing into her and killing her on Atlantic Avenue between Nevins and 3rd at the end of November. And so I just wanted to, have us all lift up Alina Morales and think about how we can make Atlantic Avenue safer for everyone.
We do have ideas about that. We work with traffic calming and had some suggestions about slowing the traffic, which would have to do with signal timing and, having a better flow of traffic so that they wouldn't speed up to all the lights. But I don't know. I don't drive, but it doesn't look like it's.
Can we put that on our list, Carolyn, given the fatality in late November on Atlantic Avenue? DOT should implement traffic calming measures that improve pedestrian safety.
Sure, I will. But Juliet, I'm thinking the list is a little long. Do we want to split it and ask DOT to come back maybe in April? Or do you
Half of the
think
things they're not going to respond to half the things, so we'll let them respond to whatever they can respond to.
Okay.
And then the rest they can get back to us on. I think that's fine. And Caroline, the
analysis. They do analyses of fatal crashes, so there should be something specific they can tell us about it. You just ask them what are they planning?
Mm-hmm.
What do they fund?
Right, that's a good question. Not just what are they planning, but what did they find as an analysis of that crash? Okay, back to you, Caroline.
The other thing is I had friends who did not know they would be arrested for protesting a lack of eviction moratoriums last Friday, and that was all fine. Like, they're used to that, but the problem was the way the police officers conducted themselves. They didn't wear masks. They stuffed people into vans together, so no social distancing. They took a few grandparents, so age was a factor. And people were kept not socially distanced in a police precinct for more than 11 hours. Wait, sorry, that's wrong. Until 11 p.m. So 8.5 hours with one bathroom break. And the police officers were having a holiday party and said, you know, we can't give you any more time or process you faster because we've been defunded, which is not true. But I did want to bring that to your attention. If you have people you can encourage, you know, to make sure they have their most extreme mask if they're going to risk arrest, or if you know any police officers who you know, want to do their job in an efficient manner and can kindly encourage them to do so. It's worth bringing up because no one, like, it's unsafe to the officers, it's unsafe to the people involved for them to be stuck in holding for as long as they were. Thanks.
If I could just add that, ask the police department, do they have masks to give to the folks that they arrest?
They did. They offered masks to the folks they arrested, but the officers themselves did not wear masks.
Okay.
I think this would be good to bring up with, to have the community board office bring up with the 84th precinct. What do you think, Caroline?
We can ask. I mean, we could always ask. There's no problem with that.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for sharing that, Caroline.
Whenever these interactions occur, please pull out your camera phone and take a picture. Wherever possible, take a picture.
Totally. Yeah, if you look at Mike Hollingsworth's Twitter, he got some of the arrests on camera, and the number of police officers to the number of people who got arrested was about a 4-to-1 ratio. No one really expected to get arrested. But yeah, it is on video.
Thank you. I don't think we have many members of the community, but I'm going to open up community forum in case anybody wants to bring anything up at this point. Okay, I'm assuming we don't have anything else on the agenda, but I don't have that in front of me, Carol Ann.
There's nothing else.
I'm gonna wish you guys a happy holidays and take a motion to adjourn then.
So moved. Same.
Thanks, John and John. All right, everybody, have a great have a great holiday season. Enjoy the snow.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you, Caroline.